So we're now into 2022, and I thought I might just have a quick look back at some of the things that occurred musically in 2021 that I was following, as well as a look forward to the things that we're anticipating in 2022. Now, you may be wondering, dear viewer, where my series on Mark Knopfler's solo albums is. Well, I did film a video on the Golden Heart album, Mark's first solo album, but I looked back at it after editing it, and it was shit. So I'm going to have another attempt at that, and I promise I will get into Mark Knopfler's solo albums at some point in the next few months. But talking of shit, let's look at some of the less good things that happened during 2021. In October, Elton John released an album called The Lockdown Sessions. Now, Elton has been a hero of mine since I was 11 years old, ever since he released an album called The Big Picture, which I've always felt was a hugely underrated album. I still love that album to this day, and I've bought all of his albums since then. The Lockdown Sessions is the first Elton John album that I haven't bothered with. Now, this is not a normal Elton John album, okay? We should say that from the off. It's not one of his regular albums that he's co-written with Bernie Taupin. I think there are a couple of new John Taupin compositions on there. But the album consists predominantly of collaborations with a lot of very contemporary sort of chart acts that Elton has put together over the course of the various lockdowns that have occurred over the past year and a half or so. I think it started when he was doing various guest appearances with other acts, and he ended up with enough of these that he decided to make it into a full album. So he did some more collaborations, and that resulted in the Lockdown Sessions album. Now, because a lot of the collaborations that Elton did for this album were sort of guest appearances on other artists' recordings, he was also working with those acts' producers. So he was not working with the likes of T-Bone Burnett, who produced his last 2 or 3 albums, or any of the other producers that Elton has produced his own albums with. He was working with modern contemporary producers, and the result of that is that a lot of the tracks are just this auto-tuned generic pop, which is now flooding the charts. I'm so sick to the back teeth of hearing auto-tuned voices. Whenever I walk into a shopping mall or a restaurant or whatever, it's all you ever hear on the radio these days. It makes all voices sound the same. It takes all the character away from those voices. They use it even on good voices. I mean, they use it on Michael Bublé, for God's sake. And Bublé can sing, but everything you hear him do is auto-tuned. To hear Elton John getting into that sort of realm is really quite disappointing. So that's the first thing that put me off. But also, I mean, the first single from this album was a collaboration, I think, with Dua Lipa called Cold Heart, which is in essence a remix of Sacrifice, which is one of Elton John's classics. This is originally from an album called Sleeping with the Past, released in 1989. It's a wonderful song, beautiful song. It has real emotional depth to it, but it's been turned into this sort of dance track, which is it just destroys what the essence of the song was. It destroys the heart of the song. And there are various tunes of that sort of nature on the album. There's one track on there, imaginatively titled Always Love You, which is a collaboration with Young Thug and Nicki Minaj. That's the end of my YouTube career. Nicki Minaj, yes. And these are a pair of rappers. And everybody was raving about this track. Everyone was saying how wonderful it was. People were even describing it as beautiful. But it's absolute garbage. It is really totally unlistenable. I've never heard so much nonsense in my entire life. And as is so often the case with these modern chart rappers now, they can't even rap in time. they're not even musicians in the traditional sense. They're just mumbling incoherent nonsense. It's just absolute rubbish. And it amazes me that people listen to this stuff and think, yeah, that's good. It's just absolute garbage. And to hear Elton John being involved with a track like that, when you consider what a wonderful artist Elton is and all the wonderful music he's given us over the years, it really is disappointing to say the least. Now, I can't deny the success of that album. I think it was actually a #1 album, and it has produced a couple of #1 singles. But that is more down to the fact that Elton is working with these hip acts who are very much the kind of the flavour of the month, the kind of artists that unfortunately young people are listening to these days. But I believe Elton is working on an original studio album, a conventional original studio album with Bernie Taupin, so it'll be hopefully a regular Elton John album. And I just hope with that album that he kind of redeems himself. I don't know what his fans think of the direction he's gone in with the lockdown sessions. I mean, there are some fans obviously who will just blindly go along with whatever their favourite artist does. There are some fans who will give credit where credit is due, and I genuinely am a fan of Elton. He is one of my biggest musical heroes, and I don't wish any ill on him, and I hope that he will bounce back musically with a much more Elton-like album. I don't know when that's going to come. It could be this year, it could be next year, but I just hope he redeems himself somewhat with his next project.